x cubed plus 4x squared plus 4x plus 3 equals 0. Graph the polynomial and find the one solution on the graph. Now, it says find the one solution, but how many solutions does this have? 3. How do you know it's going to have 3? Right, it's cubic. Its highest exponent is a 3. So let's graph it. Y equals x cubed plus 4x squared plus 4x plus 3. Now, when we're graphing it, you don't type in the equals 0. Okay, then you hit graph. And remember, we said we're expecting 3 zeros, 3 x-intercepts, but we only see how many? 1. And where is it? The -3. Okay, so that is going to be useful to us because one of our 3 solutions is a -3. So you're going to take the original polynomial and divide it by that -3. But when you're writing it in factored form, how would you write it? X plus 3. Remember, when you're writing it as a factor, you write the opposite sign, x plus 3. But then you turn right back around, and to divide it, we use synthetic division. So what would it be in the box? A -3. Okay, what numbers would we put out here to do synthetic division? Right, you just look at the numbers of your polynomial, 1, 4, 4, and 3. What's the first step of synthetic division? Drop the first number, which is 1. What do you do with that 1? Right, and you get a -3. That then becomes a right that you multiply by the -3. And then that becomes that you multiply by the -3. And you get 0. Okay, so then, remember, if your question was cubic, your answer is quadratic. So it'll be x squared, and then x to the first, which you really don't have to write, and then this one would have no x at all. This was a positive 1, and this was a positive 1. So over here, how could we write that in simplest form? Right, and then remainder of 0, but since it's a remainder of 0, we're not going to worry about writing it. Okay, now, when we look at something like this, a quadratic trinomial, you might be thinking bubble method. So if you're thinking bubble method, you're like, okay, it needs to add up to a positive 1 and multiply to a positive 1. Can you think of 2 numbers that do that? Okay, well, 1 times 1 is 1, but what's 1 plus 1? No. Okay, so will those numbers work? So when you can't factor something, what do you have to do? What's up here? Quadratic formula. Anytime you get to a quadratic trinomial that can't be factored, you've got to do the quadratic formula. What's the very first thing you need to do to start that process? Correct. Correct. They're all 1. Okay, so when we plug them in the quadratic formula, it'll be -b, which is the -1, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2 times a. And what's 2 times a? 2, because 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, then what's the next step to simplify this? Okay, do y'all remember the name of that? What's all of this under the square root symbol called? The discriminants. Okay, everything up under the square root sign is called the discriminant. And what does the discriminant become? -3. Okay, so then you would look at that and say, well, what is the square root of 3? Don't worry about the negative. What's the square root of 3? It's a decimal, right? So it's not a perfect square. So normally when we have something like that, don't we have to take it to the side and try to factor tree it to simplify it? But what are the factors of 3? So is there anything to circle? No. So what that means is you can't simplify the square root of 3 any further. It stays the square root of 3. But you can take that negative out and make it a 9. Okay, but then remember how I taught you that when you have a complex part, you split it, and the denominator goes under both parts. And so that's the final answer. So think about it. Your first answer is -3. Your second answer is -1/2 plus I root 3 over 2. And your third answer is -1/2 minus I root 3 over 2. Okay, next example. What's the first thing I need to do? Graph it. Good job, Rob. Okay, -2x cubed plus 6x squared minus 29x. Okay, now it's cubic, so there's going to be 3 solutions, 3 zeros. But we only see 1. Okay, so the other 2 are imaginary. Where is the one that we see? +2. So you're going to take the original polynomial and divide it by x minus 2, which then will turn back into a +2 when we do synthetic division. Okay, so what numbers do we put here? Right? Okay, then what's the first step of synthetic division? What do you do with that number? Multiply by 2 and you get a, and then, right, 6 minus 4 is 2. You then multiply that by 2 and get a, which combines to be a, and then when you multiply it by 2, you get a -50, so we have a remainder of 0. So when you take those 3 values and write the answer, what will the answer look like? Right, remainder 0. Okay, so when I set that equal to 0, to solve it, we can't factor it, so what do we have to do? Quadratic formula. So what's the A? What's the B? And what's the C? Okay, so the formula will be what? Tell me what to write. No, because your B is positive, so, yeah. So square root of all over -4, because when you do 2 times A, that's 2 times -2, which is -4. Okay, what part do you simplify next? Which is called the discriminant. Okay, so you end up with 2 squared, which is 4, minus 4 times -2 times -25. That's right. Okay, so you end up with -196. So let's forget about the negative part for a second. What's the square root of 196? 14. What do we call that? Perfect square. So look, you end up with -2 plus or minus 14, but since it was negative, I. And then look, now that we see that it's a complex part and a real part, what do I need to do? What? Split it. Put the -4 under each part. Okay, so now let's reduce. What's -2 over -4? +1/2. And I forgot to go ahead and write our one real solution at the beginning. Then, plus or minus, what's 14 over -4? 7 over 2, I. Okay, now turn to page 20. Okay, so on page 20, I'm going to work one more with you, and then you're going to work the other 5 for classwork, and you should have plenty of time to finish those 5 today if you're working. Because keep in mind, Thursday's the 10 square, so you don't have a lot of time to do them.
Nope.
Okay, number 2, here we go. What do we do first? Graph it. You have to find the one real solution. So y equals x cubed minus 3x squared plus 4x. We're on number 2. Yeah, I'm doing number 2 just because it's a little bit different. So that's why I'm doing it. Okay, then we graph it and we see that it has a 0 at 3. Okay, how do we use that 0? Aren't we basically going to divide the original polynomial by x minus 3? Because it crossed at positive 3. So we're going to divide the polynomial by x minus 3. But when we divide using synthetic division, what is it in the box? Positive 3. And then what does all this become? Right? Okay, so what do I do first? Okay, and then right? Okay, then that multiplies by the 3 and it becomes, that combines to be a, that multiplies by 3, so remainder of. Now, it might help you if you do what I'm about to do. See how this one started out x cubed? So this one starts x squared. And then we'll just put a plus x, because think about it, if that's x squared, wouldn't the next term get an x? And then the last term wouldn't get an x at all, because you already did the x squared, the x to the first, and so that would be your constant. So instead of writing it like that, what would be better? X squared plus 4. The middle term is gone. Now when we set it equal to 0 and solve it, what's the easiest way to solve one of those? Correct. You use square roots. Subtract 4 on each side. You end up with x squared equals negative 4. Then what do? Square root it to get rid of the squared. And so x equals, what's the square root of 4? 2, but it was negative. I, and anytime you take the square root, plus or minus. So look, I'm not sure, I need to look at the test. I'm not sure if they're going to write it like that, or if the test has it written separate, like a positive 2i, a negative 2i, which is the same thing. They just might write it together or separated. And then what was our first solution? 3. So those would be your answers. Like on the 10 square, that's all you would need to write is 3, and then plus or minus 2i. Okay, so you start trying 1 through 6. I have the answers up here that you can come check once you've done them. And if you need help, we can both assist you. You just need to let us know. Either come up here or raise your hand.